Good afternoon, everyone. This is Patrick Osterhaus, and I'm happy to share some information today on this webinar for looking at how to do migrations in the best manner to drive efficiency, reducing costs, and minimizing downtime for your SAP, SAP HANA, and SAP S4 HANA solutions. We're going to be recording this webinar, and we'll be posting it out to social media here after this webinar completes. And we'll also have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, so feel free to submit your questions and we'll get to them at the end. So let's get started. That's me. I'm Patrick Osterhaus, Chief Technology Officer for Protera Technologies. And we'll go through a brief agenda here, what we want to cover today on our migration topic of moving SAP Compute into AWS. So we'll go a brief introduction of what Protera is, what we do, and our mission as a company. And then we'll look at how to start with your migration efforts going to the cloud. We'll look at some of the available choices that you can use on your migration path. And then we'll also look at running SAP HANA on AWS and the features available today. And then we'll look at our suggested recommendation here for moving SAP Compute into AWS, and that is Protera FlexBridge. So we'll give you a brief introduction and an offer for all the participants for this webinar today. And at the end, we'll finish with a lot of case studies of companies already taking advantage of AWS for the SAP Compute. So to start, we wanted to go through a quick introduction about Protera. We started in 1998. We're coming up to our 20th anniversary here next year. We are based in Chicago, Illinois, and we have offices around the world. So we have, as you can see in the lower left corner, our locations are located, as I mentioned, in the United States. We have a Latin America office, we have a European office, and an Asia Pacific office. So this provides us follow the sun 24/7 support of all of our customers and those points of presence around the world, so we can best support customers wherever they're geographically located. Our mission is to focus upon SAP solutions and driving all IT innovation to those solutions for our customers. And today we'll be talking about taking all the advantages of the AWS cloud and capturing those innovations and bringing those into the SAP solution stack. So we'll talk about how we apply our mission here specifically for the AWS cloud and how we can migrate the SAP solutions to it. For the certifications on the lower middle section, we are happy to announce that we got our global certification 3 weeks ago from SAP. And this certification requires us to be audited in 3 different continents over 3 different locations over 3 different months. So it's a quite lengthy process. We started with our certifications back in 2008, and we started with our hosting and AMS services, and we've continually expanded those service offerings. And now with the global offering, we have recognition from SAP of our follow the sun support 24/7 around the world. Also want to take note of our long-standing partnership with Amazon, AWS, with staying a trusted partner to AWS and where they're going with their technology. As we'll see here, some of the new instances and technologies available. Also with our partner SUSE for running SAP HANA in the best manner. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these new features with HA and DR that you can capture in the cloud, which is some advanced features that you certainly want to take advantage of once you migrate into AWS. Then we'll also talk about, on this slide here, the services that we offer. We'll introduce the Protera AppCare solution, this platform, which is a full services stack. You can see some of the features that it provides, and I'll go into a little more detail in the next few slides. And then we'll also talk about, as I mentioned, this FlexBridge service offering. Very excited with this new offering to ease and simplify the migration into the cloud. So talking about the AppCare platform, this slide here from a high level abstracts what our services provide. And as you can see in the middle, these services can be provided from anywhere around the world. As I mentioned, 24/7, we have multiple offices around the world, and we provide these services to public clouds, as you see here with AWS. We can also integrate those public cloud instances in running SAP and many other third-party applications that you see on the right side. We can provide that even in a hybrid model where we can take advantage of a company's private data center. So we don't have to get all the compute into a public cloud to start supporting a customer. We can support hybrid for many, many years. And we do this, in fact, for many companies that are doing a migration into cloud, and they'll start with just a sandbox or a DR system. So we have a lot of experience with making hybrid cloud work and working it to the, bring out the efficiencies of cloud without slowing down any efforts of adoption by the users. Within the AppCare service portfolio, we have all these services which take advantage of the AWS infrastructure of cloud. We fully support that. As I mentioned, with the private data center, the public cloud and private, and then going up the stack so we can fully support the whole solution. We can take advantage of and fully manage the compute, storage, the networking, and then setting up some of these other more advanced topics like HA and DR, doing the full OS and database administration, as well as doing the monitoring, making sure those systems are up to snuff with performance, doing all the capacity planning and all implementation support while those systems are being built out and after go live support. And I should also mention, most importantly, that we have a help desk that supports all these efforts. So any tickets, any issues can get routed through this global 24/7 help desk, and that gets dispatched immediately to our AppCare specialists, our experts. And I'll finish the slide here by saying that it's not just SAP we support. There's many, many applications that tie into SAP that we provide full application support upon, and we'll do all the management on that. And that is fully supported through our help desk, through our AppCare service centers. Before we get into some of the migration capabilities that we've been working on, I'd like to take a step back and describe how we got here. And over this 18 or 19-year experience of doing SAP, we've been doing the design, the deployment, and the running of SAP in this life cycle for that whole time. So we have a lot of experience with global implementations, multi-year implementations, very complicated, with not only with the challenges of implementation, but also the user requirements and the complexity of the system. So we've seen a lot of different ways SAP can be implemented and some very challenging scenarios worth doing migrations and upgrades. So we got a lot of experience with the whole life cycle, which in this slide shows our design phase, which we would architect the solution here in AWS and come up with the proper sizing and look at these advanced features right off the bat. So with in mind of designing an HA solution, we would build that into the production landscape day one. We'd also want to consider DR and looking how best we can capture the advantages of cloud to bring those into the backups. So we can quickly do very fast backups and very fast restores by utilizing the AWS snapshot and the S3 capabilities. So we would look at that from day one with our design and utilizing our best practices for AWS. In the deployment phase, which we'll be focusing upon here in this webinar today, it's around the migration. And we've been doing migrations for many, many years and come up with our own internal best practices. And about 3 years ago, we realized that there is going to be a tremendous need to do a lot of migrations and upgrades to HANA and moving to cloud. So we figured out we have to have a better approach just for our internal operations to be able to support all this. And so those initial ideas and requirements drove the creation of FlexBridge, which we'll talk about. But again, we're there for customers while they do implementation and all the testing to get it live. And that's where our AMS services come in play, where we do this run SAP. We follow the methodologies from SAP, which we're, again, certified upon. And we're going to keep those systems running at top-notch abilities at all time for go-live operations. And I should also mention that all of our services are backed by an SLA. So there's financial impact if we do not meet performance criteria, as well as it's a monthly subscription. So it provides customers the flexibility of a cloud-like model where you can subscribe to services and pick out exactly what you need to support your company the best. And with that, this is a good snapshot of what AppCare provides and how it's adapted for all the years that Protera has been in business. When cloud started, when we started using cloud in AWS, we started using putting some demo systems in 2008. And upon the AWS certification in 2011, we've been putting production instances into it. And you'll see that in some of the case studies coming up at the end of the webinar. But the example here is just to show the reach of innovation in IT, and we bring those new innovations that AWS brings to the table. We bring this then into our customer solution immediately. So we can quickly bring the flexibility of all the applications that are supported by AWS. And in this webinar, we do not cover all those instances or those different case studies and different scenarios of SAP and software. But certainly there's so many available choices for SAP software now on AWS, as well as third-party applications to integrate those SAP systems to. So we bring that reach of applications and very quick deployment where you can build an instance within minutes. and we can bring that flexibility and quick deployment to our customers through the AWS cloud. And also, we talk about scalability. This is the power of being able to right size your system as needed, so we can scale up the compute for a system that needs it on a weekend or during payroll, or if it's a busy season for a seasonal company. We can certainly adjust the compute and capture the cost savings with the other 90% of the time where that compute's not required to be scaled up, and we can pass that savings on to the customer. And then we have the agility, the rapid deployment, as I mentioned, which provides a lot of capabilities here. We can create very quick copies of a whole landscape. This can be used for prototyping. This can be used for DR testing. Many scenarios, and it quickly provides a lot of choices to the business to capture these new innovations from the AWS cloud and bring that to the business. And then we also have the security where, as I mentioned in our design, we consider the security requirements all within the design of the SAP solution on AWS. I should mention that we are SSA 16 certified, and that is something that we're audited on every year. So we obviously have to have our security incident awareness and our security policies up to snuff and fully monitored. And that's the AppCare platform sits on top of the best architected AWS, architected solutions with the best practice of AWS to ensure security is built in from day one. And we utilize all the nice advanced features within security within the AWS cloud for provisioning, as well as user access with the IAM capabilities. So that's built, guaranteed the most secure method within the cloud. And lastly, this efficiency where we do our very best to simplify the billing and all of the spend optimization for a customer. So we've spent a lot of time in the last few years on AWS and how we can best support our customers on the cloud and how we can capture those cost savings and take advantage of those new innovations that continually come from AWS. So we talked a little bit about Protera and how we got here today. We'll now talk about some of these driving mechanisms, these trends in the market that's occurring, that's causing companies to look at the cloud and also with HANA and SAP. So we have 5 trends that are driving the economy now, and this, as I mentioned, drives adoption of cloud, in-memory computing, big data, as well as the cloud, HANA, as well as the cloud. You can see that here, the hyperconnectivity, where everyone's connected. We want 24/7 easy access and real-time access to our data from our systems. We want the supercomputing, big memory, in-memory computing with big data. And again, cybersecurity, we have threats every day. More threats, we have to get more done with less, and we have to make sure that our data is not floating on the public internet. And we want to take advantage of all these new ways to digest information. So predictive analytics, we got the artificial intelligence to provide new modeling capabilities as well as decision-making possibilities, and the cloud computing, which that previous slide I think captured those pretty darn well. So with that, our IT managers and executives have to make some big decisions, and what is their roadmap going to look like here for the next few years? And we have all these drivers here that we see in the businesses. We have the digital footprint and this, the roadmap from SAP to go to big data with HANA, going to public cloud, which has come out very recently. We want to capture those new developments from SAP, which is being geared all towards HANA. Yet we still want to reduce the cost, improve the performance, and look at how we can best realize the benefits from all these new technologies. So a lot of diverging goals where we're trying to reduce costs but get more for less. So it's quite a challenge, and so we need some innovative breakthrough technologies to be able to capture those. So when we look at where we want to go from our as-is situation, is the typical approach we've done in Protera for the last 15 years is to do a landscape assessment. And when I say landscape, we could look at the company's IT in general. Specifically here for this webinar today, we're focusing on the SAP systems. So we would look at those existing systems and how they run today. So this would be some of the criteria we look upon. Now, how we do this in the past is we would send 1 or 2 of our experts out to the company site for 2 or 3 weeks, and they would interview the system experts. They would look at the systems themselves, and they would get a migration risk profile created, and they would assess all the steps that have to be done to be able to get that system ready to go to HANA and to go to cloud. And these are some of the many, many hundreds of checks that have to be performed. So part of that, when we look at what can go to HANA, our customers are quite surprised at the wide scope of source systems that can be fully supported. So you can see here the versions of SAP ECC 5 and 6 are widely supported to go to at least Enhanced Package 7. That's a very recent version of software released by SAP for the Business Suite, or Enhanced Package 8. There is one requirement for Enhanced Package 8 that requires that source system to be Unicode already. But you can go to either at least 7 or 8 from all these versions. And believe it or not, even 4.6c is supported to do a direct leap to HANA and the latest version, which that 4.6c system is a good almost 20 years old. And then the similar path for the rest of the Business Suite. This is CRM, SRM, SCM, and lastly, BW, which has been very, very popular. So those systems go back many years, back to version 7. So there's quite a large net of systems that can go over to SAP's latest HANA versions and into the cloud. So we looked at how we can start, what versions and what SAP systems are possible to upgrade. Now let's look at some of the options here of what we have on the table. And I'll start with this slide. We're going to revisit here in just a minute. Yet going back on the left side, we talk about our cloud and HANA strategy. Again, all those drivers, these trends that are happening in the market that we're trying to capture, in-memory computing, real-time analytics, and the move to mobile and the move to cloud. How can we get there with doing HANA? So we certainly can look at the top approach, and that's the new SAP deployment. And there's some companies that are looking to do this, especially around S4, being that it's a new schema, completely redesigned, and having that system replace or be in addition to their existing R3 or ECC or ERP systems or BI. So that's certainly an option. It'd be a new implementation, and those efforts would be tracked as a new team to build that out with the existing business processes and re-engineer those. The lower path here is what we anticipate will be the more preferred choice by companies, just from the business at least. And the reason we anticipate that is for all of these years, the SAP data has been put into these ERP systems, and now they have the capability to do real-time analytics and really dig into that mining of data very, very fast. And so it makes sense that they can add the analytics into that existing ECC system. So why not take that existing system and upgrade it and migrate it? So with that, we have some other options. We have this lift and shift migration where you can move it over to AWS, and we would copy that environment over, put it in the cloud, and then we would do the SAP upgrade. So with lift and shift, there would be a migration and then an upgrade. That'd be 2 steps. Or we could also look at the OSDB migration. This allows some possibility to combine some of these steps together, yet is highly complicated, and there's an extended downtime for that. So what we're going to do now is explore this lower branch and see what is some options here and what can we explore. And that brings me up to this slide. So we're going to close out on AppCare. This is our platform on our managed services, which we certainly extend to AWS Cloud, and we certainly support SAP, SAP HANA, and S4 HANA. And now I'm going to introduce the FlexBridge, this migration automation services, and what that's all about. So that's going to be coming up very, very soon. I'm going to do a quick segue on AWS and what it takes to run SAP, and then we're going to circle back and talk about the migration. So let's do a quick intro on running SAP HANA and AWS and some of those requirements around it. So these are 4 areas that a note covers in much, much more detail. And I should also mention that this would be for productive support. So if you have a sandbox system that you just want to dip your toe in the pool of AWS Cloud, you could certainly do it without these requirements all being enabled. But the note goes into more detail. Foremost, we need AWS Premier support, and that is going to enable any tickets that come in that are looking, the SAP says we have to look more details on the OS or the infrastructure, the networking, or maybe it's a kernel issue, it would require the customer to be able to reach out to AWS and get their help. So that Premier support, it's either Premier or Business. There's actually two different levels that could be provided there to fulfill that requirement. And then these other three are all technical requirements within that SAP instance. So that SAP system runs on an AWS instance, which you can think of a virtual machine, and it needs to have all these three criteria met. And that includes the AWS monitoring extension. There is a feature, or I should say it's a huge function set of AWS is called CloudWatch, and that's the monitoring capabilities within the cloud of AWS. And that has to get enabled so SAP can see into those systems, into the lower levels. As well as there's some networking requirements. So especially around HANA, we have to make sure that some of the enhanced features with the very fast networks for 10 and 20 gigabit connections are utilized to go to network with all the data transfer. And then lastly, we need to have enhanced very fast storage with solid state storage being used and provisioned in AWS for HANA. So I want to make sure that we pass that information on because those are hard set requirements for SAP to support HANA on AWS. And when we talk about the stack and the components of the cloud, we can talk about a common or standard deployment. And what we're looking at here is how we would have a customer environment connect, in this example showing VPN, into an instance, into multiple instances, I should say, that's set up in a region. So in this example, the region East, that region East is located in Virginia, and it would have this company's subnets, which is shown in the orange dotted line, for an ECC environment of dev, quality, and production. And then we can instantiate a DR instance, which would be in a different region. And that's shown better in the next slide here. The more important part of this slide is to show the difference between the compute, which is the orange squares with those rounded edges, the storage, which are those red rectangles, and then the S3, which is an icon a little higher up. That's where we would store the backup. So to take advantage of doing very quick backup and restore of those systems. And then the other really important part, which is actually a requirement under the networking section of that note, which I just showed in the previous slide, it's the virtual private cloud. That is the Amazon secure networking. So that VPN is part of this. It's a requirement to have production instances in AWS to make sure that you're getting a firewall, you're getting routing capabilities, making sure you can restrict the public internet from not being able to come in and create DMZs as needed. So a lot of good things, all requirements to build out SAP in AWS. So the other point I'll mention here is that there's very complicated, or not so much complicated, but advanced features. Might look complicated within the slide, but there's some advanced features that are capable within AWS with some very nice cloud features that are already built into the cloud. And one of these would be the CloudWatch EC2 auto recovery. And with that, it provides a very, very low cost, free option to be able to build it. It's not going to be application-aware HA, but it would provide hardware HA where if the instance would fail, it would automatically restart. So there would be a few-minute outage, yet you're going to minimize any large outage within the hardware level where the AWS cloud would automatically restart the hardware on another server. So it's a very nice feature that's built into the cloud. So we recommend all customers to be able to take advantage of this. And this is one of our standard build options that we always fulfill for all of our builds. This instance, though, is showing how we can share that instance over a common storage, which enables the CloudWatch for free. And we can certainly extend 100, let's say 100%, but multiple nines HA with a more complicated environment. And we could have this HA set up over multiple data centers even. So you're not restricted to an outage in one data center affecting the HA. You could actually have, in some sorts, HA almost act like DR to make sure that, as we ensure the performance of the system doesn't degrade. But you could have a distance within a few miles and still have HA pairing enabled. And then the last idea here, and there's many ways we can accomplish this, is with the DR system, which is set up in a different region. So as you can see, US East, which is on the left side, that is running in Virginia. US West is actually running in Oregon. So across the country, we have a replicated DR system, and there's many, many ways we can replicate that. We can use the standard the standard HANA DR, or we can look at another method to do the replication with either synchronous or asynchronous replication. So lots of choices. Point here is that the most complicated landscapes can be fully supported and best supported in AWS. And the last slide I'll talk about here is just to show the choice of running SAP on AWS in certified instances. And you can see in HANA, these ones in the top 5 and the lower and the upper right, I should say, those are all certified for HANA. So high memory capabilities. And I should mention, as of, I would say 2 years ago, there was only one R3 8X large. And within the last month, the general purpose one, the M4 16X large just came out. So lots of great innovation, continual improvements that the AWS Cloud's bringing for extending the different types of memory. I should say different type of instances. Some are high memory, which are suited for HANA, and some are, the general purpose, are more suited for non-HANA systems. So you could put the traditional databases all into AWS and be fully supported now and take advantage of the cloud capabilities there. All right, so we talked about running SAP on AWS and some of those requirements and some of those options. Now we'll talk about how we can get there. So we introduced this idea around migration and how up till now has been the options available in the market. And that includes doing a backup and restore. So you would move your compute, put on a tape, or if you had a fast enough internet connection into AWS, you could copy it into the cloud. That's certainly an option. You could certainly also do this OSDB migration, which again is like a backup. You would export the full database. You're looking at an extended outage for that. And then you still have to do these other pieces where you do the upgrade separately or Unicode conversion. So there's multiple steps, and it's very complicated. And in the market, it's pretty hard to find experts that are certified in these processes individually. So it's not only more time consuming, multiple steps, but it's also hard to find the right people to do that. So as I mentioned, we looked a few years ago, we knew that HANA is going to have a challenge of adoption with companies being able to migrate all their existing ECC and BI and business suite systems, just that there's not going to be enough skilled resources to be able to do this. So we determined we had to come up with a better approach, a way that we could automate, come up with a software-based solution for us to be able to hit all the demand that's going to be in the market. And so we already have these savings and efficiencies that we've captured in the projects that we've done already. And we'll see how we break this down here in this next slide, some of the advantages. So if this is the one slide out of the deck, which I think conveys, if there's one slide that says what this whole webinar is about, it's this one slide. And with FlexBridge, we provide all these migration and upgrade capabilities. So we can go from one OS and put it into the HANA supported OSs and the HANA database. We can upgrade the SAP system to the latest versions. And this goes for ERP or BI or the business suite. And then we can also do the Unicode conversion and the migration to cloud all in one step. So if you think of one system, moving a production system, we would do all these from on-premise, or this could be in another cloud going to AWS, and we can do that with one downtime. So to give perspective, we could do a 1 terabyte system. The downtime right now, a safe bet will be 12 hours. For each customer, we can bring some enablers and accelerators that can help even minimize that downtime shorter. So it's one of the focuses on the report that I'm going to show you is to give you a true estimate of what that downtime is going to look like. So the way we break this up into this FlexBridge solution, you can see here on the blue spheres, so the methodology, again, we're going to be focusing on all the SAP approach, those certified tool sets that SAP provides. We're going to, or the solution we provide sits on top of those solutions. So we utilize the best practice at SAP and the tools that SAP provides. We're going to use those best practices. And for the tool, you'll see here in the white, we have the assessment, which I'm going to speak for a few minutes on momentarily. We have the automation capabilities within the software. Once the migration starts, it's fully automated. And then with that automation, we tie in our knowledge base. So any problems that have been seen in the past by other migrations, by any other customers, those solutions come to us to be able to come with a shorter meantime resolution to be able to resolve issues with any migration. So the solution is comprised of the methodology, the tools, which is the knowledge base, the assessment and automation, and the last piece I didn't mention is the services. So it's not just a software-based solution where a customer is left on their own. We have guided services with our experts that do migrations only to help guide the customer through the migration project and understanding all the remediation steps that have to be done. So how we get the remediation items and how we identify times that it'll take for doing the migration and all the parts of that, we do this through an assessment. And as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, in the past, this would be a visit out to the customer site for 2 weeks with one or two of our resources to come up with all the information that we would retrieve for a questionnaire. What we do now is we capture all this information, this vital information for going to the cloud and going to HANA through an ABAP program that runs in the SAP basis stack. So what we do is we have a customer, a prospect, sign up on our website. They quickly put their information, and from that, we will give them the program. We'll send that over to them, and they can execute that. And it's a read-only program. It doesn't do any updates to the customer environment. And from that program, it will provide an output file, which the customer can see. So they can see all the data that we're going to retrieve. And it doesn't have any financial data or org structure, any business-sensitive data. We don't have that sent back to us. It's all version information, all the software components that SAP runs that have information about the character sets, which is important for the migration. It would look at all these attributes. So customers certainly has all the access to be able to go in there and look at it. And from this XML report or text file that's sent to us, we generate automatically a migration report, and we'll share that with you. And let me go to this next slide here, and you'll see a little bit about what that's going to cover. So in this report, we have an executive summary, and that's going to detail the next 4 sections. So what we are looking at as a focus is that source system. And I should mention that this is done by a landscape, so that assessment report is going to break it down for an ECC landscape. So this could be as many systems like a dev, quality, production. If you have a training or sandbox system, this report would talk to all those systems in that landscape. So we would look at that source, all the source systems. We would look at versioning, and you'll see in the next slide all the details we would look at for that section. And then we're going to give you the migration overview. So planning the steps, timing, looking at the cost of the migration, all those are going to be broken out here in this section. And then we're going to look at that target environment. So what the size is, you'll have the exact instance names in AWS. You'll also have the versions for each respective system, what it should be. You'll have that for the full landscape. And then lastly, we'll end that up with an overview of Protera and our migration expertise, as well as the appendices around Cloud 101 and specifically around AWS. So the important thing is that we use the terminology, all the diagrams, everything that you would see of your solution being architected in AWS. It's all fluid. It's concise within the AWS terminology. So looking at what it would take to migrate, we look at that source environment. So the second section, this is some of the areas it's going to focus upon, and a lot of the SAP customers are familiar with this traffic light to show like early watch reports. If there's identification of errors and problems, we would show that here where we're going to interrogate some of these. These are some of the areas, I should say. There's many more now that we're going to look at in that source system. We'll provide feedback and provide any recommendations on remediation steps that are required. So this could be, this might require some support packages to be put in. This might require that the Java stack gets separated. That is not allowed for migrations, so we'd have to separate the Java system, which isn't a big deal. It's just it's an extra small project that we have to do. And then we'd also look at those components to see if there's some components that aren't compatible in HANA for the upgrade, or if there's components that are just not released yet for HANA or S4. So we would identify those. So in summary with the FlexBridge, the benefits here is the reduction of cost. And the way that we do that is to accelerate the project timeline, as well as the automation of the software and focusing that into a few resources that are dedicated to doing that migration for you. So with all the automation and the best practices, we can also reduce the time and reduce the risk. The complexity comes through this best practices and the forcing of running the migration the same way every time through the best practices. So the approach that we do with the various SAP tools we utilize, we can take even the largest SAP systems and take them to this best practice standardized approach for the migration to reduce the complexity of it. And the visibility portion, is around the project management. I didn't show a screen on that yet. That the customer is notified at any of the major milestones of the project. So as we're doing each migration, they get notified when critical steps are being passed. And our hope and what we've seen is that this can help minimize the full-time equivalents that customers need to use on the project management side to be able to run the project on their side. So we've seen a lot of improved benefits and efficiencies on the project management side also. So let's get to the good stuff. So let's talk about the companies that have done this and captured the benefit of going to AWS as well as the migrations. So foremost, we'll talk about Fitch Ratings. This is a financial services company. We are currently migrating them right now. They've passed the proof of concept phase and they're running their non-production environments migration over to HANA, running on SUSE on AWS. And the production environment's coming up the next few months. So that will be their full environment, which would be SAP Business Suite, the ERP system, Business Objects, and Solution Manager. And that is being done with the Protera FlexBridge solution, which I just presented. So big cost savings as well as efficiencies there captured for using FlexBridge to go to HANA on AWS. The next two projects are migrations that have happened to go over to AWS and their SAP systems full landscapes, including a lot of non-SAP systems that have been migrated over to AWS. And you can see those are the ERP Business Suite full stack solution. ArcLight's a very interesting case study. They went 16 weeks live on S4 HANA directly on AWS. Then we have a very good hybrid model. This is for our candy company. They run BobJ on AWS and with HANA, and that also is SUSE. And that is a hybrid model in that the BobJ system exists in AWS and the ECC system's on-premise. They're looking to move the ECC on-premise system in AWS eventually. But right now it's a good hybrid model and it's proven to work very well. MB Codings is another good example of FlexBridge. That's a migration from Windows Oracle over to HANA, running on SUSE. That was one of our first migrations a few years ago with FlexBridge. Then I'll also mention these three companies. We have Merrifield, which is one of the very first productive SAP systems in AWS. There's actually a case study out on YouTube. You can look that up. Very good example of using the benefits of cloud, the elasticity to scale up very quickly for their seasonal business. So it's a very nice case study. And we also have Midwest Tape, and they've been a very good case study in using the best of the AWS cloud and applying that to the DR solution. So they can quickly scale their multi-terabyte ERP system and test that any time. So they can create a full copy within minutes. And they can also use this DR landscape to quickly build a test environment, which is a copy of production. So they've captured the benefit of this. And Midwest Tape is a very innovative company. They've built a solution on AWS for libraries to be able to stream movies and media. So it's, they've been able to use their innovations built on AWS and integrate that into the SAP solution, which is hosted by us as well as their DR system. And then I also mentioned Tableau, which is a very popular analytics package. Their demo systems run on AWS with BI. And then we have two examples here. Harvey Building Products is a very, very large DB2 database running on AWS for DR. And this case is a really interesting case study. It's one of our very first DR systems we built in the cloud on AWS, in that it's running 3.1i with Oracle 9.2. So even the earliest versions of software for SAP and the databases can be run in AWS in a DR setup. So very, very impressive that it works so well. So we'll get to Q&A. Before we do this, I wanted to mention that everyone that's attended this webinar today, feel free to go out to our website. As I mentioned, it's 4 easy steps to get that assessment, so you can do that from our website. And also, I'd encourage you to attend our next webinar, and we're going to look at some more information on these best practices that we've learned from the customer success stories, and that's coming next week. Looking at some of these companies I've mentioned already more in detail and getting some of the business advantages that they've captured. So I'd highly encourage you to look at that. So with that, we'll go to Q&A. We got already 4 questions that popped up in here, and I know I want to be respectful of time. We scheduled this for 45 minutes. So I got 4 minutes to get through 5 of them, but feel free, if you have more questions, pop them in there, and I'm happy to get to them. I'll adjust the time accordingly. So the first one here is around moving to AWS and what is it required for the network connectivity? That's the first question. So this is for the POC, we recommend you would start with doing a test of the POC first. With that system, you would not need to require a dedicated network connection. You could certainly just start with a VPN, and that could be, for most companies, they already have that connectivity, the firewall already established. So aside from the cost of labor to be able to set up a new connection, there's no new resource cost, resource being network or internet cost. So we recommend to do that first, and we see that working sufficiently for almost all DR scenarios. Now for migrations, it certainly will work still. So from a functional test, it's really good. From a stress or a performance test, it doesn't work as well. We would recommend getting a direct connection for doing production and even the test up to production to make sure we can estimate time for the downtime properly. But for doing a POC, the VPN site-to-site is certainly sufficient. And so we would recommend that actually to do that not only for the cost savings, but also for the time savings, and that it doesn't take time to order a new circuit to go to AWS. Yet, the one thing that's the silver lining here is when you're looking to go to cloud and going to AWS as your new data center, essentially, if you're getting away from on-premise and you're going to the cloud, you're going to want to have a dedicated network connection anyway. So this is something that you're going to probably have already in your roadmap, and you'd want to have that by the production build. So we just recommend to do it a little earlier so we can get some good test runs and we can really get a good estimation on that downtime phase for the migration. So the next question comes in, can I give a generalization of how it works to do this migration with all these changes at the same time? So, so I mentioned before about the options in the past, and these include doing an export and an import, and then there could be some additional steps that SAP is going to require to do an upgrade or to move it to cloud. And those are all certainly options. There's a lot of third-party products that will copy a VM over to the cloud and do it. The synchronization might take a few days or even a week, but the switch over to go to cloud is within minutes. And those work extremely well. The challenge there is that we can't capture the benefits of doing multiple things at the same time. And so how we do that is we've used multiple tools from SAP to be able to do these transformations all at once, as well as our best practice of doing many migrations into AWS over the years. So in general, that's how the FlexBridge works, where we're taking advantage of multiple technologies to be able to transform the solution and do all this at the same time. Next question. So the one question, it's focused specifically, this number 3 is focused specifically around Unix, and it's around, can Unix systems be migrated directly to AWS? So the guiding rule here for the OS, the operating systems that are supported to go to AWS is x86 based. So in general, for AWS in general, that's going to be the Linux operating systems as well as Windows. Now, that list gets shorter when we talk about SAP certified operating systems, mostly specifically around SUSE, there's Red Hat, and there's also Oracle that I can think of the top of my head, and then obviously Windows. So we would, for SAP, we would have to look at one of those flavors. So if you have that already running on premise, you could do an exact copy over to AWS. If you do not, we can almost, when we say FlexBridge can support almost any flavor of operating system that's supported by SAP and move that over to HANA and go to cloud. So the short answer is, if you have an x86-based operating system today, you could do an exact copy in AWS. If you can't, you'll probably have to look at FlexBridge to do this migration, go to HANA. And the other question we had here that popped in, this is the fourth one. I think I'm getting close to time, so it'll be a good one to finish on. That's around what is the general time and duration that a migration project will take? So I'll mention from the start, I would say in general, what we've seen even for large size systems, and I would just simply say that if it's a larger size system, large to me is 1 terabyte. If it's a 1 terabyte system, that's a sign that it's a more sophisticated customer, being that they've had SAP a little longer, and also that they probably have a more complex business, so a lot of business processes and configuration in there. That's my generalizations. For that 1 terabyte size system for production, I would say 6 months is a good round estimate for all the testing and change management that has to happen within the business, as well as being able to support the move to cloud. There's a lot of things that have to change on how you do routing in the network. Not huge efforts, but there's a lot of steps involved with that, and that's where we have expertise, and we certainly help companies with that. But I would just say, from a general rule of thumb, if you say 6 months from start to end, I think that's a good gauge. And if you think of how you capture all these change, upgrading the SAP version, going to HANA, going to cloud, possibly doing a Unicode version in that, it's a tremendous amount of transformation within 6 months. So that's the guiding rule. So 2 minutes over, and I think that we'll stop there. Feel free, reach out to our website if you have any additional questions. Feel free to come to our next webinar here on the 21st, and you can reach us on these social accounts also. So I very much appreciate your time today, and I look forward to seeing you at Sapphire, which is coming up here in the next few weeks. Take care, everyone.